can I tell you guys a secret? But you have to promise not to tell anyone, okay? So when I was a kid, I thought I had superpowers. Yes, that's right, don't laugh. I thought I had superpowers. For example, I thought I had lightning fast speed. Like no 4-year-old could run as fast as I could. Also, I thought I could take pictures with my mind just by blinking. Worse still, if you ask a therapist, I think my parents were enabling me. For example, if I asked my mom, was I the hardest to deliver out of the 3 of us children, she would say yes, which I concluded meant I had superpowers. They would even pose during family vacations and ask me to help them take pictures for them with my eyes, so they would stand there, I would blinking like an idiot. My dad would ask me to use my lightning fast speed to go pick up his newspaper from the other room, and he would be timing me, so I always want to beat my previous newspaper picking speed record. So my whole kid life, that was my identity. I thought I was a superhero. But you see, your identity co-evolves and grows with you. Thankfully, or I've been in an asylum by now. Your identity is important because it is you. But it is you who shapes it. Can I ask you a personal question? When you die, what do you want your epitaph to be like, or the words written on your tombstone? Okay? Option A, you could say, "Here lies a Malaysian Chinese Christian male." Or option B, you could say, "Here lies a loving father who will always be remembered for his laughs and generosity." You notice something there. Option A identifies the person only by his labels. If you never met that person, you can only relate him to with those labels. But option B paints a much clearer picture. You see, humans nowadays on Earth have a very serious problem. They have a problem with their identity and how they identify themselves. You might be thinking, problem with identity? Isn't that what only teenagers go through? Deciding who to date, who to hang out with. How does a problem with identity affect me, my community, and my future? Well, it all begins with how you identify yourself and how others identify you. Humans nowadays are so afraid to be an outlier in society that they rather change who they really are just so they can be accepted into a group of people wearing masks so they can feel less awkward or threatened. The greater issue that identity poses is that the people who have no identity are the easiest targets. They are the easiest to be manipulated and brainwashed into believing into a certain cause or abandoning their previous self. This is because when they feel like they do not belong, anywhere is good. Now this could lead to a pack of people who like to do goat yoga, or a pack of people like ISIS. Terror and hate groups target these vulnerable people. They make them feel wanted and important when society has deemed them inadequate and a burden. This is why nowadays we live in a culture of fear, a culture of segregation, a culture where all of us must be grouped together into specific boxes. So, now imagine a room filled with toys. Now if I'm a green army man, I belong in a box that says Green Army Man, which is logical. But the problem arises when the Green Army Men start fighting with the teddy bears just because they belong in a different box that seems alien to them. Now that's the problem with our identity. Our identity is just that label on the box that indicates what we are, not who we are or who our enemies are. Our identity should be defined by how we speak, how we think, and how we act. That is the true standard of how to evaluate a person, not are their labels. These labels, they define us, but they don't make us. Take Daniel Briggs, for example. See, Daniel was bullied most of his life. Because of his labels, society has preconceived expectations of him. So when he didn't like sports or he didn't like a certain type of music, he was deemed alien. And he wasn't willing to change himself just to fit into society's molds. The nail that sticks out the farthest gets hammered the hardest. He didn't fit in, so he was made a target. It started out with words, then they started throwing trash at him, even jumping him from behind on the way to the bus. One day, one of the boys texted him, "Daniel, why don't you take one of those precious guns of yours and do the world a favor?" Daniel replied, "You don't have to worry about me no more. I'm going home to kill myself." And he did. Daniel Briggs took his own life with a shotgun at the age of 16. Because he didn't fit in. And he's not alone. 1 out of every 5 students are bullied, most of the time because they don't fit in. Fit into what? Why do these little boxes even exist? Why are children being tormented just because they don't want to squeeze themselves into these little capsules that society imagined just to feel safe? These boxes are too small, too ignorant, too selfish, and they don't fit everyone. Because everyone is different. Children whose lives taken from them even before it began. Families left with nothing but painful memories. Suicide is now the second leading cause of death in that age group, taking more than 5,100 young people from us every year. Nobody is born with an identity. No baby pops out of the womb saying, "Hey, I identify as a male, Malaysian, and I don't like you because that's what my social affiliation tells me to." Instead, identity is something that evolves over time. An interesting question to be asked is, why do people even feel the need to fit into a specific identity group? Our culture has molded us into thinking that we must belong to a certain group in order to be deemed normal. But the problem with that is, nobody is similar. We are all different and unique. Do not take that statement lightly. No other person on this earth is exactly like you. Even if you have an identical twin, your traits and your actions will set you apart. And I think that is something beautiful. We must not look down upon ourselves thinking we are but a single boring Lego piece. Instead, we should see all people as uniquely shaped and brightly colored pieces. And when we finally realize that we do not need our labels to identify who we are and where we belong, then and only then will we come to terms with the fact that we are all important in our own missions on earth. Then we can build a beautiful and peaceful society, where every piece has its place and no piece has to be grouped together in any specific order. So, if everyone on the world was exactly the same, this world would be a boring grey block. After all, we're all part of the same species. So why should we fight over our differences? Instead, we should embrace them. So parents, stop molding your children to be like the others on the block. Teachers, do not disregard a child just because he cannot do well academically. But most importantly, at least make my epitaph funny. Thank you.